The Dallas Cowboys pass defense really struggled against the Rams, but you shouldn't panic just yet. We'll tell you why next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we are recapping the joint practice between the Cowboys and the Rams, and we're going to look at the defensive side of the ball. The Cowboys had a practice on Wednesday, but it was a walkthrough. Nothing happened. So we're gonna go back to Tuesday's practice, and let's talk about the pass defense, because without Matt Stafford, the Rams kind of tore it up a little bit in the passing game. They had a lot of success. Puka Nacua had a couple touchdowns. Devontae Adams had a couple touchdowns. You were there on the field. What did you see?
Yeah, well, I think, what you saw is a bunch of guys that you are hoping are not going to be playing for the Cowboys, a whole bunch of snaps, playing very kind of basic coverage against some of the best wide receivers in football. And I think, the Devontae Adams clip that's kind of going around that where he was running that corner route, and they were just dropping into very simple, let's say cover 3 zone potentially. I think the passes that you saw, most of the big plays were happening on were Andrew Booth, who has unfortunately kind of regressed back into where he was, previous. Yeah. I mean, he regressed into regression, kind of hit positive for a little while. And now he's, regressed back into bad. And Troy Pride, who, I mean, is scrappy and fights hard, but isn't going to be able to overcome, very simple coverage against one of the best wide receivers, or two of the best wide receivers in football. So I think if we had seen a lot of man coverage and seen a lot of Elam getting burned, I think the panic should be, a little bit higher. But right now, I think what we're seeing is, it was more just about making sure these guys dropped into the right spots and did the right things and tried to make a play on the ball when it was close. But on those particular plays, it doesn't look like it was very close at all. So,
No.
yeah, I think it's not quite worthy of panic yet.
Couple things. Number one, the Cowboys are going to win in coverage this year by their pass rush. And listen, we know this. Like, again, hoping that you have Micah Parsons. If you have Micah Parsons and Dante Fowler and Donovan Ezaraku, who we're going to talk about, and Oso Digizua, your hope is that you can get quick enough pressure so the corners aren't as exposed as they were in this really 7-on-7 period, because your quarterback's not worried about getting hit, in these drills. So that's your hope. Your hope is that your pass rush is so good the quarterbacks don't have time to find open receivers. The other part is, I think the Cowboys have 3 corners right now that you feel good about, and that's Deron Bland, Kyrie Elam, and then whoever's a slot corner, whether it's Keemon Hall, whether it's Izzy Mukamu. I think you feel good about those 3. The issue is beyond those guys, right? If the Cowboys were to suffer an injury to Bland or Elam, and even if it's a 2 or 3 week injury, I don't know how they come back from that. They just don't have enough quality corners. But I'm assuming the Cowboys believe, hey, if we can get to week 2, 3, 4, 5, and Trayvon Diggs is back, and we have Bland and Elam and Mukamu, we're going to be okay there. Booth and Troy Pride aren't going to see the field.
I mean, I hate to tell you this. Yeah, I think if Elam turns an ankle, I think I know how they're going to handle that. They're going to handle it by putting Mukuamu out there, and then probably really leaning into silo-based coverage, cover 3, cover 1. Because honestly, that's what we've seen out here. And he hasn't been bad. In fact, probably has been better, at least consistently as Booth. But it's not what you necessarily want. And I think that the lowest you'd like this floor to go in the defensive backfield is having Mukuamu and Keemon Hall kind of rotate that nickel spot. You don't want to have to stretch this thing any further than that. But yeah, I mean, that's one injury away from not being in a great situation and certainly not having your best players on the field.
Well, and think about how many corners the Cowboys are down right now. They're really down 4 corners, right? Trayvon Diggs, Savon Ravel, Josh Butler, Josh Butler's back on the field practicing, correct?
No, he's still.
No, he's still out.
Yeah.
And then Kalen Carson. So that's 4 corners. Again, I'm not saying that those guys would have dominated practice and held Puka and Devontae to no catches, but I think those guys would all be ahead of Booth in pride on the depth chart. Now, the issue is we don't know when any of those guys are coming back, but they should come back, and your cornerback play should be better theoretically.
It's really like there's like a parallax effect. Like it's such a moving target on where we feel like. I mean, I think if we had a trend lines, right, of where we think these guys are coming back versus where it feels like they are as the process goes on and as we get more information, the lines between Trayvon Diggs and Ravel have flipped now, right? Like it feels like Ravel is going to be a likely early season pup guy. And I don't even know with Diggs anymore. He may not even be on pup anymore with the way he looks. So who knows? But I think at this point, you certainly can't count on either one of those two guys playing week 1. That's I would say you can definitely count that's not happening unless there's a miracle with Trayvon Diggs somehow. And I think Butler is a potential, like maybe on a different timeline for those guys. We're not getting the kind of updates necessarily from him as we are.
And that's because he's a down roster corner.
That's my point, right? Is that like how much would it matter? I think he probably is better than Booth, but I mean, how much will it move the needle? Not too much. Carson would be nice to have back, but I honestly just don't have any gauge for what kind of player he is at this point in this scheme because we haven't really even seen him yet.
No.
So yeah, it's just so much unknown at the position, which is why I think, they continue to kind of throw bodies at the problem.
Which is why I'm wondering, could they potentially go out and get a stopgap corner just for the first month or so? Because if you go out and sign a Stephon Gilmore or a Rasul Douglas and they can get you to October, right? Then I think, I hate to say like the cavalry's coming because this is what we say every year when they get a bunch of injuries at one position, but it really might be the case. Like there's a chance that we get to October 1st and you have 3 cornerbacks that you feel really good about coming back to help out your depth chart. There's just also a chance that you're in a really tough situation throughout September.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to find a way to leverage your practice squad. Sign a veteran to the practice squad or something. Because that's the other problem you're going to run into is that if you need to get these guys off these lists, you're going to have to start making room. And there's so many of these guys that eventually you're going to have to figure out the roster management angle of this.
Yeah, so overall, the Rams definitely got the better of the Cowboys secondary. But if Andrew Booth and Troy Pride are playing meaningful snaps for the Cowboys this year, you're probably in big trouble there.
I would also say, too, like we didn't get any one-on-ones on either side of the ball, which was interesting, right? Because usually
it was more team stuff.
Yeah. So really, like it was kind of team stuff, but even which is kind of weird because in team stuff, you should be working on full team strategies instead of running just very basic formation. And it they were running like cover 3 and like cover 1, like basic stuff, like not even rotating their safeties necessarily very much or anything.
All right, let's talk about the linebacker play because Marist Liufau is somebody that we've been keeping an eye on throughout training camp. How did he perform against the Rams? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it just a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are out getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out. It makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Just open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are recapping our defensive notes from the Cowboys joint practice with the Rams. Let's talk about the linebackers. And I really want to start with Marist Liufau, the Cowboys' third-round pick from the 2024 draft. How did he look?
I was actually kind of, there was some reports out there that that the run defense looks terrible. I actually was kind of pleasantly surprised at certain points. And we have to remember too, this is a Sean McVay running attack. Like this is the boogeyman man as much as Aaron Rodgers has been at certain points for this Cowboys team. Like even in these practices these last few years. So I thought for the most part they looked pretty good, or at least up and down, I would say, but not like across the league bad or across the day bad. And I think that Liufau was one of the guys that had a good day. He was able to kind of read things appropriately, pull the trigger, and get to where he needed to, and get his hands on the ball carrier a couple times. I think one of the guys that we really were, I think we even talked about him in the show before leading up to the camp practice was Kenneth Murray. We wanted to see Murray get an opportunity. We didn't get to see very much of Murray, which I still think he's kind of working his way back from, kind of getting into the swing of things after being off. Yeah. So, it feels like he was off for like 2 weeks. So it was, they're kind of really working him in slowly. So we didn't get the chance to kind of see him as much as I'd like to, but I think in his stead, we saw a really productive day from Damone Clark. I think Joe Hoyt had a really funny and great video of him kind of being decleated as a blitzer, but as a run defender, he had a really good day. He was able to sniff a couple different things out. Has the speed to get to the outside to chase down Kyron Williams when he sees it, and there was a great play outside to his left that he made the play and was able to weave through traffic and make the tackle. Another guy who just has put together a lot of really good practices. So it was good to see the kind of undercard linebackers have a solid day so that they can kind of make their case for getting more opportunities even before Overshown comes back.
Yeah, and I saw Jack Sanborn, who's been wearing the green dot on the back of his helmet, which indicates that he's the one calling the plays. He's being signaled into plays. I saw him make a couple of really nice plays in the run game as well. You worry about him in coverage a little bit because he's not the most athletic guy, but what did you see?
Well, I was just going to say, I saw him make a play in coverage just the other day. He wasn't quite able to come down with the interception, but he was able to drop into the coverage, read it correctly, was able to get into the passing lane and kind of disrupt the pass. So yeah, that is certainly the thing you worry about with Sanborn is that, he's decently athletic, but, trying to chase some of these elite running backs one-on-one that in the situations like that, maybe not his best strength. But if you're asking him to kind of drop into some hook zone or get in front of a pass that's going over his head, he has the athleticism to kind of do that. And I think we've seen that on the field.
We also saw Overshown just like running up and down the sidelines. Like he's just chomping at the bit to get out there. I feel terrible for him because like you could tell like he loves these practices and he just wants to be out there. So another player that I wanted to ask you about, former linebacker, I guess, Marquise Bell. He had a big hit early on in practice. What did you see from the Cowboys safety, former linebacker, whatever you want to call him?
Well, listen, it's not my analysis here that you're going to get. It's Sean McVay. Sean McVay was right in front of me and went out of his way after calling a play to come over and go, "Hey, 14, really good stuff." That's not a quote because that's not exactly what he said, but he was very complimentary of number 14. He said because of the way he was able to read the previous play, they were specifically trying to target him with the misdirection, and he read it all the way. So kudos to Bell. Again, not from me, from Sean McVay. You're just hearing me report it out of his words. So, and not his words. Again, maybe a little bit more.
Cleaned up. We're a kid-friendly show.
That's right. Absolutely.
How have the safeties looked? Just not only just in this joint practice, but kind of throughout camp. You've been there the last couple of weeks. That has been one spot that has concerned me a little bit. Not so much Malik Hooker, but Donovan Wilson. Wande Thomas has been out. Sounds like he's going to be out another week or so. But what have you seen from the safeties during camp?
Yeah, it was good to actually just real quick on Thomas. It was good to see him getting his helmet on. Like he is starting to kind of work into stuff. he wasn't a part of the scrimmage yesterday. He had his helmet off then, but he was starting to kind of do some more stuff in these non-padded practices, which is good. I actually think that the safeties have been one of the underrated parts of this new defensive change. And I guess I kind of had blocked out or had forgotten, but like, yes, obviously Hooker has a lot of experience in this defense, right? I mean, having come from Indianapolis, where he was with Eberflus previous to his time in Chicago, but previous to Eberflus's time in Chicago, and then obviously ended up here. So that's part of the reason that I feel like Hooker has had a kind of a standout camp. And previous to this, Hooker's been a very solid player, but I don't know that I've ever noticed him as a standout, like having a standout camp. But there's been 2 or 3 days that I've seen him where he's in great position to make a play on the ball in the back, or he's coming down and he's making a solid tackle in the run game. He just seems very comfortable with what he's doing in a way that maybe he wasn't quite fully comfortable doing last year. And it's reflecting in his, just being at the ball a tick quicker than it felt like he was the previous years. Wilson, I feel like I've seen him making plays. I haven't seen him. It's kind of what we had talked about, right? The floor feels like it got lifted a little bit because I haven't seen him getting just burned at times. And look, the Cowboys have the squad to do it. The one thing the Cowboys aren't going to have a problem doing this year is throwing the football. I don't think. So as long as Dak Prescott's there, they're going to be a good passing team. And I think it's been a test for these safeties. And I haven't seen Donovan Wilson specifically being targeted or abused in these camps the way that you worry about in some of these games, because he can be such a high floor, low ceiling. Reverse that. Way. High ceiling, low floor player at times.
Call it high variance just to make it
high
nice
variance. Thank you. That's so much easier to say. Yes, and we talked about how we just felt like he needed to lift the level of the floor of his play to kind of get back to that 2022, 2021 level of Donovan Wilson. I think maybe we're starting to see a little bit of that. Obviously, we'll confirm it week 1 when we get out there.
And Wanya Thomas, it's just a bummer because it really felt like this would have been a camp where he could actually compete for a starting job with Donovan Wilson. But because he's missed so much time, I have a hard time believing that's going to happen. I still think he's going to play a lot, but we'll see.
They're going to have a role. I know that they have a role specifically for Wanya Thomas. And I think that they have a very different role for Bell, where he's going to be kind of their goal line tight end eraser type. Like we've seen that a lot. He's playing on goal line a lot. I think these guys are all 4 of these guys are going to get a lot of play this year.
All right, let's talk about the defensive line, because there was no Micah Parsons, but there were still a couple guys that stood out on that side of the ball with that unit. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, Landon and I are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. And to kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's only one team left standing. With a season around the corner, now is the time to get your lead together and give this new mode a try. But if you're into the classics, you can still go do that. You can play in head-to-head leagues. You can play in private leagues. Or you can just go out and join a public league right now on Yahoo Fantasy. So stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, let's talk about the defensive line. I want to start with Perrion Winfrey, who the Cowboys signed from the UFL about a month and a half ago. He's made some plays in camp. How did he look during the scrimmage?
Well, he's one of our drumbeat guys, right? Like he's one of the guys that we've heard some consistent kind of positive play every few days. We're hearing like seeing him make a play or do something interesting. He just he clearly has the physicality and the body type to be an NFL player. Like that's, I mean, I don't think that's the issue. I think clearly off-field stuff has always been kind of the issue, and how serious he's taking kind of the on-field stuff as well. He's taking it very serious this time, and his play kind of reflects that. He was able to kind of break through, make a play, kind of stuff up a run and allow the linebackers to kind of flow behind him. And it feels like it's every day I'm noticing big 99 in there. That's the thing that's so interesting about it to me, is that, his profile reads as a, up the field 3 technique guy. Like, I mean, explosive, get up the field, but he's so big and, he's strong.
He's wide. He just has a huge wingspan. Yeah.
Yeah. That 99 really fits him well. Like, cause he's kind of high cut. He's just big, but he's not like, sloppy in any sort of way. But he plays a little bit bigger than it feels like he is, which is saying something, because he's, 6'4", 300 pounds, or so, probably 6'3". So he plays big. He's playing kind of in the middle. He's kind of rotating in as that 3-1 guy on the second team. But every time he's getting in there, he's making plays. And even when he's playing with the ones, he's doing some goal line stuff. He looks good. So he's just a name that, again, drumbeat. We're hearing it. We're hearing it pretty regular. Can he continue it? Let's see.
Yeah, we're going to do a preseason preview on Friday, so be on the lookout for that. But Winfrey is one of the guys that I want to highlight. Like, they clearly have a need for more defensive tackles, veteran defensive tackles. And I don't want to say that Winfrey's a lock to make the 53-man roster, because he's not. But I think with a strong preseason, not only could he make the team, but he could have a pretty big role right away.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not sitting here suggesting that he's like the savior that we've been looking for.
No, of course not. He's just somebody that can play.
Exactly. Having another body who you can rely on to go out there and to make a play, or to be an effective player, like especially at a position on the defensive line, whether it's inside or outside, the more of those guys you can have, the better. So if he's a guy who you feel like you can rely, to feel like he's ready to kind of take the step back into the NFL, the Cowboys may have found something there.
I want to talk about Donovan Ezaraku, the Cowboys' second-round pick from Boston College. I was actually listening to him give an interview after practice, and he's so funny. He's like, someone was asking him how he performed, and he said, all right, I think I would have had a couple sacks today if I was allowed to hit the quarterback. And, just a couple sacks against a first-team offense that's going to be one of the best in the league is kind of funny. But he was almost exclusively like bull rushing tackles. I wonder if the Cowboys we're trying to have him work on some of that stuff. There were a couple speed moves he used, but man, just another guy that continues to look really good for the Cowboys.
I mean, he's playing on this game, right? You think, right? There's no way. That
he has to.
So,
and he'll probably start. I bet it's him and Sam Williams at start.
I wouldn't be surprised. That's probably what I was going to say, is probably why we only saw him bull rush use the bull rush and not kind of anything else, is because he's saving that stuff for when the pads come on and he can actually hit the quarterback. Right now, here's something I want to keep in mind. You heard Marcus just talk about how easy thought that he probably would have had, a couple different sacks. Those are still some of those plays in which, Devontae Adams caught the ball down the field, or what I'm saying? So we got to keep in mind that when we are digesting this stuff, that like, that's the ultimate difference between live football and these practices, is that live football is results oriented, where the practice is still about getting to practice. So
and on the flip side, Jared Verse might have had a couple sacks, probably at least 2, where the Cowboys completed passes 100%. As well. So that's why you shouldn't overreact too strongly one way or the other coming out of one single joint practice.
That's why we're trying to focus on individual matchup stuff and how individual players do, because that's just a little bit more stable thing to kind of comment on than like whole groups, right? Especially when you're doing very vanilla stuff. So kind of back to what we were saying. I think that Winfrey is a guy that I think could, potentially make the team, be a guy that is a contributor, comes in, plays, 7 to 12 snaps a game or something like that. Who knows?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's valuable, and especially for the cost.
Any other defensive linemen stand out to you? How did Jay Toia look? Tyra Sweet? Any of those guys?
Toya, I only noticed a time when he kind of struggled against a double team a little bit and got pushed back on a play where actually Winfrey ended up making the play, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that helped them kind of make the stop. But not, he was a rookie defensive tackle taking a double team. He wasn't being blown off the ball, but he was being, escorted off the ball. Let's say that. It's going to take some time for him. He's going to win and lose some of those battles. It's hard for veteran defensive tackles to win and stalemate defensive tackle double team. So he's just going to need to learn that a little bit. But I think overall he's had a pretty positive camp. Tyrone Wheatley.
Tyrus Wheat. Yep.
Tyrus Wheat. We got Tyrone. I see. Tyrus Wheat. We got to talk about because a big body guy again continues to make some plays in the run game. Doesn't have a ton of value, continues to not have a ton of value as a pass rusher. But as this NFL kind of trends towards these collapsing the pocket defensive ends, bigger body guys, especially for special teams purposes, I wonder if he is a guy that ends up making the roster again, or maybe they sneak him on the practice squad, but I feel like he's going to have a role. And I think the other thing we should point out, right, is that we got distributed a depth chart in these before the
very unofficial,
which we usually keep, as we kind of understand as being very unofficial. But it listed him as the kind of backup to that sort of strong side defensive end behind Marshawn Nealon, which makes some sense because of his body's type. But I think, kind of speaks to how they think about Tyrus Wheat, if we can figure out a way to get him onto the roster.
Yeah, just another guy to keep in mind when you're watching the preseason game this week against the Rams on Saturday afternoon. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. He is Landon McCool. I'm Marcus Mosher, and we will see you right back here on Friday.